Hi there, welcome back to the SEO Bootcamp by Moz Academy. This is the Reporting on SEO course, and in this lesson, we'll be talking about the reporting worksheet, specifically about awareness metrics. Now, in your worksheet, these metrics start at row 1. Now, let's start with the non-social mentions. Non-social mentions start on row 2 of your reporting worksheet. And these are brand mentions. So these are other websites talking about you, possibly referring to a piece of your content or referring to your brand or your product, but they're not linking to you. This also does not include things like Facebook shares or Twitter mentions. Now, to find some non-social mentions, you'll use the Moz tool Fresh Web Explorer. And this will give you a list of mentions as well as mention authority, which is a good qualitative metric. So we want to see a list of mentions for our brand. So to get to Fresh Web Explorer, you'll click on that Moz Pro menu, and Fresh Web Explorer is listed under the Research Tools. And then you'll type in your brand name and in quotes, and then an or, your domain name, and then put a -rd : yourdomainname.com. What you're doing is you're instructing Fresh Web Explorer to find any mentions of your brand or possibly product name, or mentions of maybe your domain name, and then a -rd means they're not linking to your root domain. RD stands for root domain. So these are people that are talking about you, but maybe are not linking to you correctly or forgot to link to you. We're looking for people who are just talking about you. So you'll enter this string of text into Fresh Web Explorer. Now, once you enter this in, you'll want to change that drop-down under View Web Mentions to the last 4 weeks. And then you'll see all of the mentions of your brand in the last 4 weeks. Now, what you can do is export this to a CSV. And here's what the exported results look like. So this will show us all of the websites that are mentioning us, but not linking to us. And here you can see the page title, the URL, the domain, and then in column D, you'll see a metric called mention authority. Now, this takes both the domain authority and the influence of the page into account to give you one good metric that will give you an idea of how worthwhile this mention is. And then you'll see the date found. Now, what you'll want to do is you'll want to copy these rows. Start with the headers, including page title. Copy all of these rows, and then you'll paste them into your reporting worksheet in the Mentions tab. Now, these are potentially places you can get links from, but that's actually not the entire reason we're reporting these. So again, copy these mentions, paste them into the Mentions tab of your reporting worksheet. So here, for example, you can see how I've pasted the mentions into the reporting worksheet. Now, either from your CSV or from the Google spreadsheet here in your Mentions tab, what you're going to do is you are going to highlight column D of all of the results. So you're going to highlight the mention authority starting with the first result all the way down to the last result so that you can get a count of the mentions as well as an average mention authority. So start with that first result, highlight column D down to the bottom result. Now, if you're using Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, you'll get both a count and an average in either of those types of spreadsheets. If you're not using one of those types of spreadsheets, what you'll have to do is look at the number of rows that you've highlighted as well as enter a calculation of that mention authority and the average. But what we see here using Excel is down here in the very bottom, this green bar, you see the number of rows that have been highlighted in column D, as well as the average mention authority. Now you're going to take that count of rows and you'll enter them in your worksheet. Under the Summary tab, you'll enter those in row 3. Now if we're setting a baseline to start off with, you'd enter them in B3. So that's the number of mentions. You'll see count of mentions. Now, you'll take that average, which is the average mention authority, and you'll enter that in row 6. And again, if we're setting a baseline, we would enter that in B6. So these mentions are leading indicators. They're not links, but they're mentions of your brand. They're possible link opportunities, and they're worth tracking just to see how awareness is increasing. You can look at both quantity, which is the count of mentions, as well as quality, which is the average mention authority, and hopefully those metrics will increase. And again, later on, from the Mentions tab, you might want to see if any of those websites are willing to link to you as well. Now, another thing that you might want to do in Fresh Web Explorer after you enter that query is set up an alert for automation. So you'll enter that query, and then when you set up the alert, you can have it delivered to you monthly. Setting up these alerts in Fresh Web Explorer is a great way to cut back on research time. That way you don't have to keep coming back to the tool, entering queries, doing counts, etc. These reports will be delivered to you. Okay, so those are non-social mentions. Next, let's move on to inbound links. Now, this is row 10 in your worksheet, and this is another leading indicator. We're getting more link equity from these inbound links. We're also getting more traffic from these inbound links. So to find the metrics that we'll want to enter in our worksheet, we'll go to Link Explorer, which you can find under the Moz Pro menu. Click on Link Explorer and enter your domain name. Now, after you enter your domain name, you'll want to click on the Inbound Links tab over on the left, and you'll set your filters to look like this. So first of all, this will always automatically default to limiting results to one link per domain for feeds and proxy sites. And those are things like bit.ly and feedburner.com. So you want to leave that checkbox checked. Leave link source blank. Change that link type to follow. That way we're reporting on all of the backlinks that are including link equity that are helping our domain authority, and link state active. So once you set those filters, you'll export that to a CSV. That CSV will reflect the filters that you put into place. And in that CSV, you'll do the same thing that we did with the mentions. What you're going to do this time is you're going to highlight the domain authority column, which is column F. And you're going to start with the first result and highlight all the way down to the last result. And then what you'll want to do is get a count, so that would be the number of links, as well as the average domain authority. Now you'll take that count, and in your worksheet, you'll enter that in row 11. Now again, if I'm setting a baseline, it would be B11. And then you're going to take the average domain authority of those mentions, and you'll enter that in row 14, or in this case, B14. So this will, again, give us quantity and quality of our inbound links, and we want to see both of these metrics going up so that I can see both quantity and quality increase. Okay. Now, you also have another option if you have a Moz Pro campaign. If you do have a campaign, all of this information is automatically saved for you. So in your campaign, you can click on links, and in that overview, you're going to see all of this data, such as domain authority, total links, all of these different metrics. And when you scroll down, you'll see your domain authority over time, as well as linking domains over time. The other advantage with a Moz Pro campaign is that you can create a custom report. So you can click on custom reports in the top blue bar, and then select which modules that you want to add. And the nice thing about those custom reports is you can schedule it to rerun automatically weekly or monthly, and then have them emailed either to clients or internal stakeholders. So that's a different option if you do have a Moz Pro campaign. Now, some other options for link counts is you can use any of our competitors. Majestic, for example, is a great competitor. You can enter your site. You'll see the external link count here, and then you can also see some history of backlinks. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, what's with the differences in data? I looked at Ahrefs, and I looked at Majestic, and I looked at Moz, and all of these had different metrics. And you're probably going to get asked this question because no two sources and no two tools are exactly the same. And there will always be conflicting metrics. So maybe you've recently switched tools, so there's conflicting numbers. Or maybe you've taken over SEO for a company as a freelancer, and previously the previous SEO was using a different tool. Or maybe you've stepped into a new role in-house and you're noticing a serious conflict in data. Well, there's two aspects to this. The first one is the sampling method. So a little bit about the sampling method. Imagine that this blue circle represents all of the pages in the world, in the universe, every single web page. Now, Google says they've indexed about 2% of all the pages in the world, and that's because a lot of what's out there is low value. So let's say this is Google's index, that little circle. Let's blow that circle up and kind of zoom in. So now this is all of the pages that Google has indexed. Now, when crawlers go out, Google, Moz, Majestic, Ahrefs, SEMrush, they're going to go out and they're going to index various parts of this sample. So Majestic might crawl this subset of pages, Moz might crawl this subset, Ahrefs might crawl this subset. Now there's probably a bit more overlap than what's actually being shown in this graphic. But you kind of get the idea. There are just some pages that each of these crawlers find that are only in their index. Each crawler will have different counts and different indexes. So if you have links coming from outside of any of these three circles, the tool may not find them. It's just based on how each crawler is built. So that's something to think about. The other aspect is the batching method. So Moz, for example, crawls the web every day or so looking for links. Each tool has its own time frame. So to take all of these pages, push them through, it requires batching. And batching speed can determine whether or not you see links in a tool's index. So let's take sample number 1, say 1 million pages, and start processing them. Let's say the crawler then takes another sample, starts processing those pages, another sample, etc. So if your website was in sample 1 and it takes a while to get to sample 6, maybe 3 days, 4 days, a week, it's possible that you've built a bunch of links during this time, but the tool might not get back to your site until the next time frame. And depending on what the crawler's time frame is, it could take a while. So if you got a link yesterday, it's very possible that a tool hasn't indexed yet. Different tools have different time frames and different samples, so that's the reason numbers could be different. There's not one that's right or wrong, it's just a different sample. Now, our last section that we're going to talk about under the awareness category is the top of the funnel keywords. Now, you'll remember that we have our funnel stages, and we have keywords that belong in each stage. And we have our keywords tagged with that label corresponding to its topic and its sales funnel stage. So what we want to do is go back into our Moz Pro campaign under the Rankings tab and filter by sales funnel stage. So if we've attached a filter called Top of Funnel Keywords, we'll want to filter by that label and then look at the search visibility. And then what we'll want to do is take that search visibility percentage, and in your worksheet under the Summary tab, you'll enter the search visibility in row 19. And again, if we're setting a baseline, it would be B19. Remember that those top of funnel keywords are very important. They were part of our matrix, and we want to create and manage labels that have all 3 phases of the sales funnel as well as for each of our topics. You'll remember that the top of funnel sales keywords were here in our matrix. So that is the awareness phase metrics in your reporting worksheet. Thank you.